Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Thursday, April 24th, and the time is 12:08 p.m. The KIPP Texas Board of Directors meeting is now officially called to order. I'm Allison Thacker, Chair of the KIPP Texas Board of Directors. Board members present today are, please respond when I state your name. Gene Austin?
Here.
I believe Peter's stuck on an airplane. Cleveland, not attending. Lauren Gore, still waiting. Keith Hennington?
Here.
Dolores Lozano? She's coming. Claudine Lussier?
Yes.
Ethan Phillips?
Here.
Patricia Ponton?
Here.
Sean Ravensburg?
Here.
Sean Raymond?
Here.
Mackenzie Richter?
Here.
Manolo. Alex Sharma?
Here.
Darla Whitaker?
Here.
Sarah Villarreal?
Here.
All right. And myself, Allison Thacker. For the record, a quorum is present and the meeting's being video and audio recorded. We've made this meeting available for members of the public to view by Zoom, and if we have members of the public watching a meeting, I welcome you to this meeting. I do remind you that the meeting is for the board to deliberate and act, and unless you previously signed up to speak, there's no public participation. We appreciate you attending and being engaged in our work as KIPP Texas. We'll now begin our formal agenda. I'd like to welcome our KIPP Texas staff, Seba Ali, Chief Executive Officer, Dan Caesar, Chief Schools Officer, Sun Han, Chief Financial Officer, Laura Howarth, Chief Operations Officer, Jenna Moon, Chief of Staff, Ann Scott, Chief Advancement Officer and Chief Talent Officer, Rona Simmons, Chief Academic Officer, and Ellen Spalding, Legal Counsel. We'll now recite the KIPP Credo. If everyone would stand and take a look at the screen. Linking arms. We're going to attempt to link arms.
Oh, link arms.
Alex and I are going
Okay,
to stretch
we're gonna
really
look
far.
We have the space.
Okay.
All right, we can do this.
At KIPP, we believe in the creation of inspired lives produced by desire, discipline, and dedication. We are not frightened by the challenges of reality, but believe that we can change our world and our place within it. We work, plan, create, and dream. Our talent, character, and integrity will be the tools we need to build a better tomorrow. We believe that we can take this place, this time, and the people here to empower our communities, create a more equitable world, and insist on a more just society.
As a team and family.
As a team and family.
We will either find a way or make one.
There we go. All right. It's a test.
Wait, we're not done. We're not done.
It's a test.
And the next one
It's a quiz. Yeah.
Eventually, you'll be able to say it by heart. Okay, I understand that we have two members of the public who've signed up for public comment for today, and I'm going to ask Ellen to lead this discussion.
Thank you. Welcome to our community members who have signed up for public comment. We're glad you're here. Thank you for coming. As a reminder, each public commenter is given 3 minutes to speak. At the end of 3 minutes, you can conclude your sentence, but then you will be asked to stop speaking and the board will move on to its next objective. The board is not legally allowed under the Texas Open Meetings Act to comment on non-agenda items, but as appropriate, speakers may receive communications from KIPP Texas leadership at a later date. Remember that we cannot use student names unless it is your own child, and we don't identify people by position or name. We simply make our public comment and we move on after our 3 minutes, and again, you may hear from leadership afterwards. Thank you for coming, and we'll start with Allison, you want to call the first speaker?
Let's see. Jennifer Stevenson has requested to speak.
And I will time you.
Ms. Stevenson?
Hello. My name is Jenny Stevenson. Up until the end of January, I taught 10th grade Honors English 2 at KIPP University Prep in San Antonio. I'm here today to encourage you to support KIPP San Antonio in having an honest conversation about effective leadership and teacher support. I have 16 years of experience in education. In my role as reading interventionist at UPrep last year, I doubled the passing rate for 10th graders retaking English 1 star in December, one of my main goals, and that passing rate was 10% above the district average. I was also recommended for a distinction on my state certification for my students' results on the English 2 star last year. I'm a nationally board certified teacher, one of 1,500 in Texas. When I listened to the September 2023 board meeting about the academic results, I was shocked by the curated and incomplete picture that was painted. I was surprised that the blame was laid on teachers and leadership took no accountability. I applauded the board for naming that the results were unacceptable and thought that the board was asking thoughtful questions with the limited information provided. The question it inspired was, when we don't tell the truth, who are we protecting? This ineffective leadership has made its way to campuses. This year, with the focus on high-quality instructional materials, English implemented a new curriculum. There are glaring gaps related to campus-level teacher support in San Antonio that have remained unaddressed and have negatively impacted teachers and students. For example, we were supposed to have weekly coaching sessions. From August to January, I should have received 16 coaching sessions. Instead, I had 2 sessions, one of which was unproductive due to my coach not having done the intellectual preparation. After this meeting, I was written up for asking for support from the district to model teach, which is a common practice in other districts. My school leader, who wrote me up without being present for the conversation, misquoted and mischaracterized me and refused to conduct a formal investigation like I requested multiple times. She also failed to check the original statement that proved I was misquoted until 2 months later. Ultimately, I was punished for asking for support even though leadership had not fulfilled their duties. I told my school leader that coaching sessions were not happening in November, which was a surprise to her. From November to January, no action was taken to address the campus support gap. I sought out support on my own. I got the number of the API at the other high school and reached out for support. I sat down with a principal friend from another district who uses a curriculum to get tips. I found an online community, asked questions, and reached out directly to the district for extra support. I worked before school, after my own children went to bed, and on weekends. Today you are talking about IA2 progress to EOY goals. My IA1 results were the highest in San Antonio for English 1 and 2 and above the KTX average. My students had already set their goals for STAR in IA2. Now their learning has been disrupted because leaders are not willing to put aside their pride, admit there were support gaps, and adjust accordingly to better serve teachers and students. When we don't tell the truth, who are we protecting? Certainly not our students or teachers, but rather people in power. Thank you for listening.
Let's see. Thank you. And now Porter Stevenson has also requested to speak.
I'll start your time when you're ready.
Yes, my name is Porter Stevenson. My wife is Jennifer Stevenson, who called KIPP U-Prep in San Antonio home for the last 4 years. U-Prep has been such a special place for her. It was difficult to watch the new administration treat such a dedicated teacher with a record of results with such disregard and disrespect. I'm here to encourage the board to read the document she put together. In the September 2023 board meeting about academic results, one of the board members asked, do we have the curriculum resources we need to prepare for the new STAR? The answer is no. I watched my wife go above and beyond to find resources on her own while leadership did nothing. When she didn't have the physical materials she needed, she figured out a way to get them. For instance, when she finally got a class set of Chromebooks, she was given no chargers. She had to give a writing diagnostic on a digital platform that she was never trained on. She used social media to beg for chargers. In doing some research, the KIPP CEO makes a base of $409,000 a year, not including bonuses, and is currently the 8th highest paid superintendent in Texas. How can KIPP pay the superintendent more than the president but not provide teachers the basic materials needed to implement the curriculum? Not only did leadership not take responsibility for the shortcomings, they used write-ups to drive her off. It's astonishing to me that she would get punished when her school failed her and she still kept working even harder. She is the teacher that reads professional development books about the cognitive science of learning for fun. In her new role, the head of the district department, who knew her from a previous role, was shocked they got a teacher of her caliber mid-year and said she respected the quality of her work and strong mindsets about kids. These are the type of teachers you are losing. Inevitably, someone in San Antonio leadership will likely explain this away as a disgruntled former employee. I invite you to question that narrative. What does that explanation protect? Does it protect the leadership who have failed to do their jobs properly? In what ways could that possibly protect students whose learning has been disrupted? If the response to this concern is accepting excuses from leadership, then you have failed to listen. Ask questions, go beyond the surface and the mission moment to get a better understanding of the truth. My hope is that this concern and honest conversations about what it means to support teachers and students True leadership avoids excuses and welcomes truth in order to accomplish meaningful goals. Right now, KIPP is not a better option than local ISDs, and that will not change if you continue to allow leadership to operate this way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson, and thank you, Ms. Stevenson. We appreciate your sharing your thoughts with us, and thank you for appearing today. No one else has signed up to speak for public comment, so we will now move on with the board agenda. So first on the agenda is the CEO report, so Stebo will kick us off.
All right. Thank you all for joining us.
Do we have this document? We don't. Why not? I'm sorry? There is not a document. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for joining us today. We have a full day and a half together, so I'm looking forward to that. I wanted to start us off today with our CEO report, as I always do. And then from there, we'll dive into our IA2 progress to goal. So, this is a really interesting time of the year for us. It's a time when we're just wrapping up testing. Our kids are actually taking their math STAR exam this morning in several of our grade levels, and that sort of wraps up all of the STAR testing. We'll, of course, have a little bit of testing still for kids who are absent, but this is really the last of the STAR testing. We have about 20 instructional days left of the school year, so we want to maximize every moment of those 20 instructional days. And this week we're celebrating Principal Appreciation Week, and I really want to show gratitude to our principals who are instrumental in fostering a really positive school culture, who work really hard to support our teachers and ensure the success of our students. So please join me in expressing gratitude to all of our school leaders, as we call them, across KIPP, Texas. Next, we can clap for them. Next month, we'll also celebrate Teacher Appreciation Week. Our teachers, as you know, are the very heart of our classrooms. They are the reason that our 31,000 plus KIPPsters feel heard, feel seen, and are inspired and supported every day. Our teachers really fill the room if you walk into our classrooms with energy, with possibility, with hope, with love, with purpose, and an unshakable belief in our little KIPPsters. And that belief is powerful, and it transforms lives. And so we are really grateful for our teachers. And I want to share a quote with you from one of our KIPP parents who wrote to us about one of their teachers. So this parent says, "My child's teacher has partnered with us this school year like no other teacher has before. Mr. B is very passionate about teaching students and making sure that students like my daughter shine on their own. He goes above and beyond to make sure every student is meeting their goals and surpassing their expectations. Whenever I had a question or concern, he answered with empathy and genuine care. We are truly grateful to have Mr. B as our teacher this year. Mr. B is an example of the countless teachers across KIPP, Texas who go in above and beyond for our KIPPsters every single day. So I look forward to really celebrating them next month, and I hope that we can give them a round of applause early as well." As we previously have shared, we're not going to go through all of our board goals during this board meeting. We don't do that every meeting. This meeting, we will really focus on our IA2 results, specifically the goals that are about achievement on the Reading Star and the Math Star. And Dr. Rona Simmons, our Chief Academic Officer, will take us through those, the progress towards those goals in a minute. I do want to share that we believe, based on our data from April 3rd, okay, so this is the data that's in your board book, we believe we're on track to meet 6 goals. Specifically, we believe we'll meet our DIBELS goal of students reading on grade level. Rona is going to talk about our reading and math goals. We believe we're on track to meeting our AP goals for the number of seniors who pass an AP exam, our average budgeted enrollment, staff retention, and our debt service coverage ratio. We're off track on 2 of our goals, and I want to talk about those for a minute. The first is our ACT-SAT goal. We believe that we will get close to meeting this goal, but we will not meet it this year. The data in your board pre-read and here on our slide shows that it shows that 11% of our KIPsters have received a 21 plus, achieved a 21 plus on the ACT or SAT in our 11th grade. We actually have updated data as of our March testing, which we didn't have at the time that we published this report. To date, 19% of all of our 11th graders have scored a 21 plus on the ACT exam. Our KIPsters will take the SAT exam. This is the first time we're administering it to all of our KIPsters on May 3rd, and so we'll have updated results on the SAT, which we think will be, we think those results will be promising if they follow what we saw for our senior class this fall. And we'll have all of those results for you at our June board meeting, assuming that we've gotten them in by then. Any questions on our ACT-SAT goal?
Are there any things that we could do to, boost that between now and the time?
Yeah, do you want to talk about that, Rona?
Yeah, I'll give a couple of, I'll add on to a couple of data points for context, because I know you all always ask me this. We don't have a slide on it today. Last year, our March ACT data was at 12% this time of year. The year before that, we were at 13%. And so we are up, give or take 6-7% over where we've been for the last couple of years. So that is pretty 6-7% gain, and that's a pretty big deal. It is far above, about 3% above the national average. And so we do believe that we will get close to this target when we add in SAT, and we have one more round of ACT. We do what we in STAR we call it crescendo, which I'm going to talk about a little bit today, which is essentially we finish teaching all the first teaches. We look at our data and we say, okay, what are all the standards that we are still not mastering and showing good, sufficient progress with? And we essentially do shorter lessons that are very targeted on those standards again. We do that for STAR. We do the same thing for AP and SAT. Okay. So that is actually happening right now, in addition to a lot of investment conversations and goal setting conversations that are happening in our seminar classrooms with our KIP 4 team. So we are trending ahead of where we've been, way far ahead of the last couple of years. And I told Seba I'm looking forward to doing the dance in a few weeks. So hold me to the dance. I'll film it for you.
Well, that will be our mission moment at our next board meeting.
I'm looking forward to being able to, but we've come a long way since in the last couple of years.
So we haven't seen numbers like this since before COVID.
No.
So
Great.
we're pretty excited about that.
They're not great. They're not anywhere close to the goal that we
Nope.
need to be, but we are moving in the right direction, more than a point or two, right? And so some real growth every year is what we need to get where we need to be ultimately.
Yep.
If you had to put your finger on why it's improved,
Mm-hmm.
what was it that's been successful this year?
Well, one of the things, a part of our teacher intensives this year, this is the first year we've done teacher intensives. We bring our teachers together every 6 to 8 weeks for intensives, and this is one of the first years, it's the first year we've done it, and we don't just do it for STAR, we do it for our early literacy teachers, and we also do it for certain AP courses, not all, because we teach too many, but certain ones where we're like, we got to get better here. And we do it also for around certain courses that we know significantly weigh heavily on the ACT and SAT, such as geometry. in Algebra 2. Like those are two courses that kids are spread across grade levels in those courses, but those skills show up about 60% on the SAT and ACT. So that's one thing. The second thing is we switched this year to some College Board assessments in terms of our formative assessment process. We switched away from what we've been doing for years, and we moved to College Board because College Board updated their assessments. And that's for AP, but some of those same skills tie directly into SAT and ACT. So our teachers have been given those, and they are actually pulled from questions from like a historical database. So it's giving KIPsters more at-bats with more similar questions to what they'll see on the real day of testing.
Rona, do you have a breakdown of these scores, Houston versus non-Houston campuses or students?
I don't with me, but I can get it to you.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that number.
Yep.
The second goal that we are off track to achieve is our fundraising goal this year. As a reminder, last year our goal was also $12 million. We raised $22 million. This year we believe we'll land somewhere between $10 million and $11.3 million. Fundraising is a little bit bumpy year to year, like it's lumpy, right? Is the correct way of saying it. It's not always a smooth line. But I want to give you some data points around why we believe we'll be off track this year and what's kind of happened to get us to this place. The Charter School Growth Fund, we initially expected a grant from them for $3 million. The good news is we did get the $3 million grant, but the way that they administer the grant is over 2 fiscal years. So we got $1.5 million this year, and we'll get $1.5 million next year. But we had counted on in our projections getting the full $3 million this year. So that was one thing that threw us off. The LASSO grant is a state grant that we have applied for the last few years. Unfortunately, we projected about $1 million from that grant and a conservative grant amount of $500,000, but that funding did not come through. We did not get that grant this year. LASSO Cycle 3, our application was declined. They had a high number of applicants and we weren't the most at need, and so we will see if they come back and do a little bit for us once they have all of their accounts settle. The Brown Foundation has historically been a 7-figure donor, but they really give to growth for charter schools, and they did not encourage us to apply for a grant this year because we are not growing. So that was unfortunate. And then last, Houston Endowment, they contributed $1 million last year to a civic engagement opportunity, and we're working with them for renewed support, but because of the timing of the grant last year, we're just wrapping up the final report for this year, and we won't be able to apply for another gift until the next fiscal year. And so that's a little bit of a timing issue. But we do have some possibilities to help us achieve or get closer to our goal this year. We're talking to the Seraphim Foundation in Houston, which has been an exciting new funder for us. They're a new foundation that just launched. And we have a funder possibility in Dallas who's new to us, who just visited our campuses. Alex, thank you for touring with Alan Questrom there, and hopefully that will yield positive results for us this fiscal year. They seemed really engaged. And last, the Lowe Foundation in San Antonio and Austin, we're also engaging with them. So we'll keep you all posted on where we land by June 30th, but I just wanted to give everyone a heads up that we're currently off track and we think we'll end the year off track. Goal.
And this was one of the topics brought up at the KIP Foundation board chair convening, and so we'll talk a little bit about that when I give an update on that.
Okay, that's it for me for the CEO report. Does anyone have any questions on fundraising or anything else on my report? Okay, well then I'm gonna turn it over to Rona to give us a deep dive on our interim assessment to progress to goals.
Alrighty. Good afternoon. It is not the morning. I had to stop and think about that. Good afternoon if I didn't get a chance to connect with you. Today I'm going to walk us through our interim assessment data for the second interim assessment for this school year. We do 2 every year. This interim assessment mirrors the same one that we took last year at this time. It is actually the exact same test. And so as you hear me talk about the data, you'll hear me talk about both our absolute achievement, so just where we landed in terms of achievement, but you'll also hear more conversation around growth because unlike last year, we are able to now compare apples to apples because we have maintained the same test. So we're able to look at the growth from year to year as a way to both inform us as an academics team and as a management team on where we need to focus or needed to focus because we're finishing STAR today. We took this test in February, so it's a little outdated. And also where, as we look ahead to plan for next year, what are some strategic moves that we need to start planning to make now? So I always start with this slide to say interim assessment data is not predictive, but it does give us the ability to do some projections based on some historical trend data and where we think we might land. So you'll hear some of those projections today. And I cannot see that far, so love you, Jenna, so I'm gonna look at my laptop. All righty. It's just far. Okay, so I want to start with a few just headlines, and then I'll get into the nitty gritty. So as Seba shared, looking at our progress to goals, that chart that you saw, we do believe we are on track to meet all of our reading targets for this year. And that is at all performance bands. And that feels pretty significant to us because we, just as a reminder, have brand new curriculum from kindergarten all the way through 10th grade this year. And we're very nervous about a little bit of a slide, to be honest.
Well, and nationally, I mean, I
That
think
is what
Shanna
happens,
can speak
yeah.
to this. There is typically a slide in results negatively when you use new curriculum for the first year.
Yeah.
And that starts to even out the second year and then rise and
Yeah.
increase the third year or so. Did I get that timing right?
So we believe we're on track with all of our targets for reading. For math, I'm going to show you all today 2 data points, and they actually say 2 different things. I wish Lauren was here because this is the one he's been waiting for. You are here, sorry. Cleve, not Lauren, sorry. He's like, I'm right here. But you have actually asked me about this as well. I'm going to share, let's see if this triggers your memory. I'm going to share our interim assessment data, but I'm actually going to share our iReady data as well. So in December, we talked a lot about iReady. We didn't really have a lot of data back at that time, but we do now. And so it'll hopefully give you just a little bit more of a complete picture on where we are with math, because that is the place where we have the most opportunity to grow. And so from an interim assessment standpoint, we believe we are on track for meets and masters. Our iReady data confirms that. And our iReady data for approaches, we have 2 different things. Our iReady data says we're on track. Our interim assessment data says we're off track. And so, that this is our first year taking iReady. So we are in a learning year. And we will see how closely, whether or not iReady is close, right? Like the projections from iReady are close to what our actual results are. So we can go to the next slide. All right, so first I'm going to start with achievement. Then I'll talk about growth, and then I'll talk about what we're doing now from a strategy standpoint. So if you go to the next slide, let me catch up because I'm going to.
And let us know if this is a helpful way of organizing the data for you.
Yeah.
We took a different approach this time to do achievement and then growth for
And then
each,
strategy.
and
Yeah.
then strategy. And we did that we're going to share with you the high level data. We've done that for the subpopulations as well. But we just want to make sure that that's a good way for you all to see the data, because it is really both of those things that matter.
Yeah. when you think about our accountability system, we are rated on both achievement and growth. Growth very heavily. And so it's important that we always have that conversation. And so in terms of achievement, you have the data here. If you look at the chart at the bottom, you can see our distance to our target for this year. And so you can see that in ELA, which includes both reading and writing, they're organized by approaches, meets, and masters in that order. So at ELA, we are 9% away from our end of year target for approaches, 8% for meets, and then 7% for masters. So that's how it's organized: approaches, meets, and masters. Similarly for math, this is why I say for approaches, our interim assessment data says we're off track. We're 20% away from the target, the end of year target. At approaches, 8% for meets, and only 1% for masters. So to situate this data, this assessment was taken in February. We are now almost, March. Our kids are taking STAR right now. So there's a lot of teaching that has happened since we engaged in our interim assessment to administration. And so that is why I included this next slide. So if you click, what I want you to see here is you should be thinking about, all right, so between interim assessment 2 and actual STAR, historically, how much have you all grown, right? Because again, there's a lot of teaching that's happened in the last 3 months. So historically, how much have we grown? And so this chart, if you look all the way to the right at the top where it says 2024 growth, that is how much last year we grew between interim assessment 2 and the actual STAR. So that is how much we grew: 6, 9, and 5 in reading, and then 15, 10, and 4 in math. And so my methodology is I took our growth from last year and said, okay, we maintain our growth from last year, same growth, and we applied that to this year's data. That gives us some sense of whether or not we'll meet our targets for this year. And so if you look below in the color coding, you can see that we would be, if you apply last year's growth to this year's data, we would be 3% away from our target for approaches in ELA. We would surpass our target for meets in ELA by 1. And we will be 2% away from our target in ELA for masters. For math, if you apply the same growth from last year, because that is like the only trend sort of data point we have, over the years we'll have like more data to be able to set a real strong trend. We would be 5% away from our target for math at approaches. We would surpass our target for meets, our meets target, and we would by 2%, and we would surpass our master's target in math by 3%. So that is assuming we maintain the same growth. Now, of course, Dan and I's goal is not to just maintain the same growth. It is always to grow even more than we have historically. When I look at numbers 1, 2, and 3%, that is like, for me, I always say statistically, it's kind of like, you can fall somewhere in that. It's just not that big of a difference when you start looking at insides. But when you get to numbers like 5% and above, which is what I'm concerned about in the red, that actually represents a lot of KIPsters. That's concerning for me, that we can actually close that gap between the interim assessment and the actual STAR. So I'll pause here and see if you have any questions.
I don't know if I'm going to ask this correctly, but it's something that I've seen both with parents and some students is experiencing that like test anxiety. How is that going to impact like our goals, and is that like a factor that we're considering?
Yes.
Because the test has changed and students are more anxious than
I
usual.
love that you asked me
I love
that.
taking tests.
Yeah.
But students we're in a different time, so how does that
Yeah.
test anxiety impact our target goals?
Yeah, I love that you asked me that because you and I haven't talked about this, but one of our regional superintendents and I, very late last night, were having a very rigorous like debate about, part of that aspect of our strategy for next year. And where we landed is that, our KIPsters take the assessment online. Everything is online now. While we do our interim assessments online, that's only twice a year. right? And so they only get that full experience of taking that online test at interim assessment 1 and then again at interim assessment 2. I will tell you that other organizations that are, ahead of us in results, the online experience is integrated into their whole assessment strategy. So every single time a KIPster sits down to take even the shorter assessments they take at the end of a learning cycle every 6 weeks, that assessment is online. Right now, ours is still on paper, somewhat. And so next year, we will be transitioning to the same system that they take STAR in. We'll be transitioning to that system for every assessment that they take. That will allow them to get more familiar, more comfortable, especially our younger KIPsters, and just have a lot more opportunities to practice the way that they're going to actually see and experience the test and all the accommodations and the tools that they can use for STAR. They'll be practicing that all year long. And so we will pilot that this summer with our KIPsters in summer school so we can learn the things, work out the kinks, so that we can go full scale for next school year.
Can I add to that, Rona?
Yeah.
Also during this season, throughout all of April, which you can see in the report, it's called Crescendo.
Mm-hmm.
Dolores, you'll remember it as Star Olympics or Tax Olympics, whatever it may have been back then. Essentially, it's a lot about building that confidence too, to try to reduce the anxiety. We're very clear with every child has a tracker and a goal. What is my goal for the actual STAR? Mm-hmm. How many questions away am I in order to achieve that goal? And how did what I learned today drive progress towards that goal? So every single time people like Rona and me walk into a classroom, that's what we're looking at a student tracker and asking them those questions. Say, oh, you're almost there. Okay, a little bit more. Yeah. To try to let them know, no matter what their goal is, whether it's approaches, meets, or masters, that they have confidence that they can progress.
Yeah. So let's go to the next slide, because I started with saying for math, I'm going to show you actually 2 data points. And I'm going to keep showing you these 2 data points. Number 1, just to get them into our ecosystem here, because you'll keep hearing about it next year and the year after that as well. And that is the data point around iReady. So iReady is a diagnostic test that we take at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year. So we'll take it one more time this year. We take it 3 times a year. Dolores, it is online. And so it is a more STAR-like experience. But this assessment is... It is quoted to be, I'll say that, as I look at Shannon, it is quoted to be an assessment that will give us very strong STAR projections. It is expected to be very STAR-like. The questions are expected to be very STAR-like. And when our KIPsters take it throughout the year, it also gives us back lessons based on where they have skills and standards they're struggling on. And that's what our teachers use in small group. This is our first year doing iReady. Previously, you all know we did MAP, right? And we sunset MAP because MAP was actually not aligned to the STAR standard. So teachers were chasing this set of skills over here, and then kids had to take the STAR over here, and they didn't talk to one another. So we moved to iReady because it is a STAR aligned diagnostic assessment. Our teachers are doing an exceptional job implementing not only the assessment this year, but also all the tools and small group instruction supports and personalized learning supports that come along with it. So much so that we actually have been asked as an organization to come and share with all of KIP Foundation and across the country, all of KIP, our best practices around iReady, because in looking at our data compared to our KIP peers, because they take it as well, our growth is pretty phenomenal this year. So when you look at our iReady projections for STAR, at every performance band, iReady actually says we will pass all of our STAR targets this year. And so that's where I started with we have 2 different data points. They actually say 2 different things. And so we are in now we'll see which one is the most accurate. And once we get an understanding of that, we'll build more of a strategy around the data point that gives us the most accuracy.
questions?
Any questions about this? Because I think in our like October, December meeting, this was already was a hot topic. So I wanted to make sure I brought it back so that you all knew how we're doing and what it's telling us thus far. Also hear me say, like, this is not confirmed. It is our first year. I'm still learning about what this data tells us. And at this point, we'll see how accurate it is.
Rona, they have data points from other systems
Yes.
they've worked with that true up to kind of
Yes.
these
Yes.
you know.
So we have some data points from other districts in Texas, but those districts don't have our same like curriculum. So there's like a little bit of a mix match there. So that's part of why I'm like, wait and see. But we also, what steered me in the direction of integrating iReady as a part of our strategy is that actually KIPP New York has been using iReady for 3 years. It's aligned to their New York standards. And a couple of years ago, they actually saw like a 30 to 40% increase in their data after using it for the 3rd year. So the first year was like a little bit, the second year was a little more, and that 3rd year, they just like. So, of course, when I saw that, I called them and said, hey, let's meet. I want to learn. And honestly, one of the things they said is the whole meeting was the Friday before Thanksgiving. And it then was ordered to, and they were, iReady. And so Dan and I, we were like, we got to learn about iReady. So that's what took us down the path. And currently, from a growth standpoint, which I'm about to get to, we're about right there with them in terms of the growth that we're seeing our KIPS has made.
Rona, do these technology tools ease the reliance we have on, or like teacher shortages and stuff like that? Like, does it make it easier from that perspective, right?
What it allows is for more personalized learning, which when you have, 28 KIPSers in a classroom and one teacher, a teacher cannot, meet the very individual needs of every single KIPSer in that classroom. A program like iReady does. Right, it takes the diagnostic data and it builds a plan for every single KIPSter. So if you were to walk into the classroom and you looked at 10 laptops, what you see on the screen is going to be different for all 10 of those students because it's customized for them and what they need.
Does it mean that we can support bigger teacher to student ratios? I mean, does the technology enable us to be more efficient in some other way?
In the way of getting down to like the personalized needs, yes. I would say, 5 years ago, if you were walking to a classroom, our teachers were struggling with getting kids in like a small group, right? Like a 4 to 5 student small group, and actually being able to get to every small group every day felt very overwhelming and quite frankly impossible. Now they are able to say, these are the couple of groups I need to see today, and I'm not worried that the other 4 groups are not getting what they need because they have a program like iReady.
But we don't think that iReady will replace teachers.
Yeah.
So we
no.
don't think we'll reduce the number of teachers.
It won't make the classroom more efficient in that way. From like a
Not
student to
in
teacher
that
ratio.
way, no.
Hopefully it'll drive our outcomes,
Yes.
Yes.
meaning the
No,
higher,
that's the goal.
long-term higher percentage
Yeah.
of meets and masters.
Yes.
Like, where would we really want to be on these?
Well, let me get to growth.
Okay.
And then I think that will answer your question. Let me get to the growth slides. So we can,
And how expensive are these technology systems to license and implement?
iReady is much cheaper than MAP was, I'll tell you that. Like a fraction of the cost.
When we think about these technology tools, do we run it through our financial team to understand the near and long-term impact to the budget? And, does that $12 million annual raise requirement become 11.5 with the right technology, with savings on our technology tool? Like, is it integrated in that way?
It's not enough of a difference in cost to reduce our fundraising goal, for example. But of course, we budget it out and it's part of our curriculum budget. But we haven't realized significant cost savings because we're using iReady and not MAP. It's not that significant.
Yeah.
It is cheaper, we like that, but it's not significant enough to change how we operate.
So budget stays the same. So for technology, the technology, classroom tech line item in the budget, that we're seeing significant savings in that line item?
No, we're seeing not significant. We're seeing a little bit of savings on the curriculum side but because we've only administered for 1 year, we haven't seen enough savings to reduce that curriculum budget from 6 million to something else.
Okay.
You know, and Sun can speak to this, but I
Well,
don't think we would really reduce it.
Well,
It's not like we'd get it to 4 million, we might get it to 5.8, you know?
Right. Well, I just sort of bringing the perspective that these implementations are not, they're both resource intensive for like us as like an
Yeah.
institution to learn it, but they
Yeah.
also practically are just cost expensive,
Yes.
right? Like if you want to
Yeah.
implement a new tech system, years 0 through 2 are the most expensive, and then
Yeah.
it's sort of even. So just picking one and sticking with it is probably better than
Right.
you know flipping.
These are all cloud-based.
Yeah, so I want to distinguish
Fairly
between
light
like the
touch
device,
implementations.
yeah, the device versus the program, right? So the device, like LMH can speak to, there's a whole different conversation to have
Yeah,
around the
that's-
actual device. The program is
So
built into
there's
our
a hardware part of this as well. Is
Well,
that
we
what
have
you're
to,
saying?
kids have to have a
No,
Chromebook.
you just need a laptop.
Chromebook.
Need a
Yeah,
They use that for everything, right?
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they need a laptop to do, you know, our tier 1 curriculum. All of our curriculum has an online component as well. So taking away like the personalized learning platform doesn't remove the need for every student to have a laptop because the curriculum is through the laptop.
Okay.
And these assessments were being done on paper before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's from a budget standpoint, right? You paid for the paper before, now you're paying for it in a
Yeah.
digital space, right? So
Kind
it's
of
more of a shifting of the format in that sense.
And that does
You get
make
a
it
lot
more
more-
efficient, that it is digital and every student can take the assessment at the same time. The only place we
Turnaround
are,
results and all
yeah,
much
like,
faster.
A lot more
and we can
data.
get those results back. I mean, when we take already,
Sure.
don't laugh at me, but I sit at my laptop and literally just
Yeah.
refresh because the data is there.
Literally does.
And a teacher can turn it around the next day and run with it.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Does that get
When we were doing paper-based, which in kindergarten, we still do a lot of paper-based. That is developmentally appropriate. But beyond that, when we were doing paper-based everything, we would be waiting 2 weeks sometimes.
Yeah.
And honestly, you know, at the rate of our world, 2 weeks to have data that you are not clear about is too long. Yeah.
So
But I
let-
think there's also a point in what Lauren is saying too, is as we get tools that make us more efficient, somewhere that should show up in dollars, right?
Yes,
I mean, just
it should. I mean, it
efficiency
should, yeah.
should equate to savings somewhere, right?
Right.
And I think what I hear you saying is it
Not
does,
yet.
but it's small, or not yet,
negligible.
but it might.
And I think there's
But I
also
think that's something you have to, it's a mindset also, right, to have to keep in mind.
and it can sneak up on us like redundancies in tech systems, like you know they're like overlapping Venn diagrams as opposed to separate and distinct. So this you know we could go tech shopping for features and we lose sight, and actually we have like this pretty nasty like a very expensive technology infrastructure that is hard to manage. No one really knows what's going on, and no one really can implement it properly because it's so cumbersome. So anyway, so there should be either an efficiency gain. Obviously, we want to see results gain, but you know there should be an efficiency gain or a savings, maybe even both, with each one of these technology exercises that we should at least consider as a part of the rollout. So it sounds like it is. So that's great.
Yeah.
Let's move on to growth.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm looking here, sorry. All right, so when we talk about growth, today we're going to think about growth in 2 ways. And I'm going to push us to think about growth in these 2 ways. One tells us just like how are we doing this year, our kids learning, right, which is an important thing for us to understand. The other is very much so aligned to how the state rates us in accountability. So we have to look at growth in both of those ways to be able to gauge like how are we doing at the end of the day. So the first is year over year cohort growth. So what I want us to think about as we talk about cohort growth, I'm going to be a 3rd grader. Last year I was a 3rd grader. This year I'm a 4th grader. So when I talk about cohort growth today, I want you to think about, I was in KTX last year as a 3rd grader, and now I'm a 4th grader. How much have I grown? Okay. When we talk about within year growth, I want you to think about, I'm a 4th grader this year. I took the first interim assessment in December, and now I just took it again. Did I learn between December and February, and is that showing up on the interim assessment? So those are the two ways we're going to talk about growth. If you are a parent of a KIPster, you want the answer for both of those to be absolutely yes, overwhelmingly. So next slide. All right, so on the left side, you can see ELA, and on the right side, you can see math. And so it is broken down in blue, that's our approaches performance band, English, and math. In yellow, that's meets, and in orange, that is masters. And so what this slide tells us is, in looking at cohort growth, so KIPsters who were with us last year, who are with us again this year, from interim assessment 2 to interim assessment 2, this is how they did. So in ELA, English and, reading and writing, we are seeing a little bit of a decline in approaches in masters. It's at 2%. Now remember what I said earlier, when you're at like 1, 2, 3%, there's some, there's a little bit of a cushion in there if you would. If that number was like 6, 7, 8%, we should be concerned. And so one of the things I said this to Stella yesterday, I said, she said, well, what does this make you think about when you saw this? And I said, it was kind of like my check engine light came on, right? Like I was like, my transition did not blow out, right? We are not like, we need to go shopping for a new car, right? But I told Dan like, hey, the check engine light is on. We need to go a little deeper here to make sure we're not sliding back, right? Or at risk of sliding back in our ELA results. And we did that work from interim assessment 2 data as we led into STAR. On the math side of the house, everything is up, right? And so we see that for approaches, we're up, but just a little bit. But where we're seeing some real gains is at meets and masters in terms of the number of KIPsters that are like moving performance bands to the higher tiers of performance. So from a growth standpoint, if you're looking year to year, that's positive. If you go to the next slide, in year, we see a similar story, right? In English, in reading and writing, we see that we, in year, so between interim assessment 1 and interim assessment 2, we grew 5% in approaches, 5% in meets, and 2% in masters. In math, which I will tell you, that is where we doubled down after interim assessment 1. We looked at our interim assessment 1 data and we said back in December, like this is not going to get us to our targets at the end of the year. And we did change some things. We changed some things with our strategy. We doubled down in some areas in terms of professional learning, specifically for our assistant principals. Dan set some really strong direction around like math classrooms, observations, and coaching. There are a few things that we did. We even changed the way that we were assessing students to allow them practice with standards that they had not learned yet based on that data. And they started getting practice with those standards on a more frequent basis so that we were like not isolating them, but continuing to practice them every single time students take an assessment. Those strategy moves paid off. So in math at approaches, we saw between IA1 and IA2 a 15% increase at approaches, an 11% increase at meets, and a 5% increase at masters. Some of that increase, you should also know, comes from the fact that we taught more standards, right? So reading is a little different because you have basically 10 core standards and they just repeat each other all year. Different genres, right? But they just repeat each other. Whereas math, a lot of that reflects new standards that had not been taught before. And so it tells us two things. We did a good job at reteaching things that students didn't learn, and we did a better job at teaching new things that students had not been yet exposed to. And so that's our growth data from an interim assessment. I'm going to show you one more slide, then I'll pause. The way that looked on, oh no, where's my iReady slide? My iReady slide is not in here.
I'll look in the appendix.
Okay, look in the appendix for me. But the headline from the iReady slide is that we saw very similar growth for iReady math as well. Actually, pretty significant growth in iReady for math as well. And so again, when I look at those two data points, iReady math and then interim assessment 2 math data, like they're talking to one another, which is a good signal, right, that we are moving in the right direction. We're not looking at those two different assessments and getting completely different stories. that would worry me, right? Both of them are saying like, thumbs up, you're moving in the right direction. And so, today's the last day of math, STAR, like the actual real test, and we shall see. So any questions about growth?
So, Rona, as I look especially at the cohort year-over-year growth, right? If I think about where is it correct to think of it as the cohort growth is where we really need to see that growth, to see, especially if we take kids who are, say, new to KIPP, right? And we know they come in potentially multiple grade levels behind.
Yes.
We have to not only grow them during the year, but at an exponent level of that, right?
1.3.
To get them to catch up at some point and be a grade level, if not above.
Yeah.
Right, which as a reminder, right, meets is grade level.
Right.
Approaches means that student is still below grade level by a year-ish. So, or a little more, yeah. So I guess my question is, if we don't see higher numbers in that cohort growth, I guess my concern is how are we going to really make that 1.3 or more growth with those students or are we always going to be playing catch up?
Yeah, so a data point that might be in the appendix. No. So comparatively, when we look at, we apply, I think this is going to answer your question, but if it doesn't, I know you'll tell me. It's okay. When we applied our accountability system to our interim assessment data last year, and we apply our accountability system to our interim assessment this year, which, as you know, looks at both our growth and achievement. So we take the whole accountability system and said, if STAR were today, right, and these were our interim assessment 2 was our actual STAR scores, what we actually see is that we are up about 6%. And so that is very promising in terms of there's something happening with both achievement, right, which I shared, going up, but also growth going up, that when you apply the system to both assessments, that we are seeing a 6%, uptick. And so does that answer your question of like?
Yes, and I mean, right, I want to meet the Texas accountability there. That's important for a whole lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But for the life outcomes that we're here to drive for these students, we have to do better than that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So 1.3 is the goal. And so that is that is research based. If a KIPPster has a strong teacher, an effective teacher, not even highly effective, but just an effective teacher in the classroom, and they have a strong attendance rate, what you would expect to see is 1.3 years worth of growth. And so this is part of why, our transformation work is so important in those schools and why we have a 3-year strategy versus a 1-year strategy, because it will take 3 years for our KIPPsters that are significantly below to finally get to grade level with an effective teacher in the classroom and strong attendance. Like, those are 2 inputs that are really critical to get to that 1.3 years of growth. And when either of those are not aligning, right, you're not going to get to the 1.3 years ago. That's why we sweat attendance, we sweat keeping our kids, right? We see, I didn't share it today, but that is also why we consistently see, when you look at our new to KIPP versus non-new to KIPP, where our KIPPsters start to hit their stride is at 3 years. Because it takes them 3 years with us to start to hit the stride and actually move to grade level, which is another, that is when we talk about the KIPP effect, it starts at that 3 year. So that 3-year mark is very significant in terms of thinking about getting to grade level, beyond grade level, and being able to be college ready.
So Rona, to that point, these are for 3rd and 4th graders, right?
No, these are for all KIPPsters.
No, but the things you were showing us before were measurements of 3rd and 4th graders?
No, all KIPPsters. I just use 3rd and 4th as a...
And I've asked for this before, and I think this would be really important.
Yeah.
What does the data show for kids that have started pre-K, 1st grade, 2nd grade, at every single level? Because that should sort of prove, I think, what you're talking about the KIPP effect. Because, yes, we owe it to every one of our kids, but let's not kid ourselves, right? We are open to any students, no questions asked. Sure. And the kids are coming in at whatever level they are. What does the data show about the value of the KIPP education? And to me, if we have the data for pre-K, K, or 1, I'd like to see what those numbers are, because I actually think those are going to be a better reflection of the value of what we are doing. It is not offering an excuse. It is not minimizing what our scores are. But I think that's shining the right spotlight on the value that we're bringing. I'd love to know what those numbers are for our 10th and 11th grade students that started in pre-K, K, or 1.
Yeah, Sean, I don't think we're going to pull up a slide right here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't answer exactly your question of, kids who come in pre-K or kinder versus kids who've been with us who came in later, but it does show new to KIP year over year. And you can see there that, about 15% of our tests taken are taken by new to KIP KIPsters. And you can see that our returning KIPsters outperform our new to KIP KIPsters fairly significantly in each data point.
But I think the data, if we looked at it, if you just took those
it'll be even more
cohorts,
significant.
then we look at our long-term goal for what we want for our entire student population, how does that add up? Are we coming pretty close to that? Are we exceeding it? What does that data show? That seems to me about an important promotional information that we can offer to families that are trying to make a choice as to whether we want to be part of KIP or not, and what the difference is of the value of what we're offering. Yes.
Over time, yeah.
All right, we're going to see if we can get this data and how's whether it's statistically significant on a count basis, because it's not,
Let me name the challenge. I totally understand what you're asking for. The challenge in us getting that data, because my brain just did something real fast. And I'm like, okay, so what would be the entry point where would we be able to grab it, right? Like actually grab that data you're asking for. The challenge is if we're looking at star change 2 years ago, we can't use that.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I'm just saying, take the current test that the kids are taking right now, and I want to pull it out over time.
Just over time, every year.
Yeah, I'm not saying comparing how they're doing. I just want to know the kids that are taking these assessments, doing the stuff today, how did those kids do if we're just
monitor
how long they've been within KIP?
Gotcha.
And let's see what the data shows.
For example, the latest test they take in high school, that the highest stake is probably English 2 star. What's the performance if you've been here since kindergarten versus?
And the same thing with SAT and SAT. How do the performance of our kids that have been invested in us for a long time compare to? Because again, I get new to KIP, that's important, but that doesn't really tell the whole story, because they could be, a new to KIP versus a student who's only been here 1 year. I'd like to know what the data shows for kids that have been here a long time, and I hope that data is going to show some really positive things.
Can we get this poor guy that data, please?
Yes.
We have that from the
piggyback
foundation.
off what Sean's saying, I think, yes, K through first grade is important, but I think what would also be really transformational is seeing pre-K through third grade, because third grade is that critical year for everyone, and I think it's a good selling point to see like our kids are meeting these marks by third grade.
Yeah. So what we'll be able to do this year for the first time, this will be the first time, we'll be able to take and I think this starts to get at what you're saying, is I also hear you pushing like project forward, not necessarily looking back, but take this group now and start looking forward. Like I see you saying both. We'll be able to take our third grade STAR data from this year, and we'll be able to say when we started the early literacy strategy with Dibbles, right? We started that 3 years ago. So this will be the first year that we'll be able to take that third grade data. We'll be able to filter for, okay, who was with us, right, in second, in first, and in kinder, which means they started Dibbles with us in our early literacy strategy in kinder, and what impact has that strategy had now on them in third grade on STAR. This will be the first year we'll see those KIPsters show up in our STAR data. So that'll be like a very powerful data point for us to really dig into and analyze, and a story to tell, because this will be the first cohort this year that will, if they've been with us for the last 3-4 years, that has experienced our full early literacy work. So hopefully that like gets us going towards what you're asking for. Okay. Yep.
Okay, we got it. Sean, we will get you that data.
Yep.
I don't know whether these slides are just a reminder of
Yeah.
what. Okay, and I think most of the rest of these slides in this section are kind of reminder ones. Were there any you
good.
really wanted to call out?
Only if you want to talk a little bit about transformation.
Right way to be looking.
I think we should
If
keep
not, then we
going.
can keep going.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll
And-
get an update on that.
Yeah, we did an update last time, and if
Yep.
people have individual questions, they can find you at breaks and dinner.
That's right. I'm here all day.
Great.
Try the veal.
Even dinner.
All right, thank you, Rona, and we're looking forward to seeing the dance and seeing how our kids did. So, Sun, can you take us through the financial update?
Yep. So today we'll cover three things: the financial scorecard, which is the same exact scorecard we see every time. We just make updates. The fiscal year 25 EBITDA update, so we have some good news there. And then we'll talk about the draft fiscal year 26 budget. Just a quick refresher, we're not asking for approval for the fiscal year 26 budget this time, but we will next time. So we just want to make sure that you've seen it a couple times before we ask for approval. So if we go to the financial scorecard, the main things that have changed here are for the financial covenant for 2025's forecast. It's gone up to 1.3. It's still down from 2024. As a reminder, our goal is 1.2 times because we want to ensure that every possible dollar is distributed to our organization and to our students. Our debt covenant is 1.1. 1.2 gives us some margin of error and some cushion here. So that changed. And then on 2026, what you'll see changed is the financial sustainability. Currently, what we have is about 96%. The board had set a goal of 97% financial sustainability, and that is recurring expenses covered by recurring revenue, meaning our deficit is larger than what we want it to be than the goal was set by the board. So the goal was 15 million. Our current deficit based on the fiscal year 26 budget is 18 million. We're trying hard to get it back down to 15 million. We also have additional asks on the table and some additional revenue decreases. So currently, the executive team is dealing with about $21 million deficit. So we're just trying to get it back down to 18 at this point. So currently the budget is for $18 million. The goal is to get it down to $15 million. Otherwise, everything else stayed the same. No changes anywhere else. This slide is very similar to the last one that you saw during the January-February board meeting. And so we're beating enrollment. We're exceeding our attendance rate again compared to, we talk to every other large charter basically every week. From a CFO perspective, I talked to their CFOs. They are again shocked at our attendance rate, and they're in the 93 range. We're in the 94 and almost 94 and a half range, which then means that our average daily attendance, which how we're paid by the state, has exceeded and is providing additional revenue to the organization for this fiscal year.
Great.
Everybody in the seat is learning. That's really good.
So this EBITDA bridge is a little bit different than what you saw last time.
And actually, our chiefs haven't even gotten the good news, Sun, from yesterday.
Yeah, so yeah, that's what I'm about to cover. So basically, what we have is a EBITDA bridge from fiscal year 25. What our budgeted EBITDA is, it's 44 million. Why is it 44? To cover the $36.5 million of debt service that we have, and then we bridge it to the EBITDA forecast for the fiscal year. So for the revenue favorability, the 2 and the 9 are materially the same as the last time you saw this in February. The major change here is $4 million from increased title funding. So Dollar and Gene were asking about this yesterday, and so were Seba, but basically with title funding, it's a big black box with the TEA. So what we do is we say, look, at the beginning of the year, we get this thing called a notice of grant award. It's a big fancy word for just an award letter from the state. And they say, this is how much you're going to get. This is how much we're going to pass through from the Department of Ed to KIPP Texas. So we take that amount and we utilize that for the budget. Throughout the year, things happen. We try to spend down our title funding as quickly as possible. So this is for low-income students. And then what we have seen is that the faster you can spend these dollars down, sometimes the state will come back and say, hey, here's an additional allocation. And so we've gotten an additional allocation of $4 million from title funding. Is it recurring? We are not putting it as recurring for fiscal year 26 because we don't know. So for fiscal year 25, we're obviously putting it into our EBITDA bridge because we have the ability to spend it down, but it is an additional $4 million for this fiscal year. We have a couple of downward pressure on revenue. The first is revenue loss. We've had a SHARS compliance issue, which resulted in $1 million of lost revenue. And then the fundraising shortfall, which we've already discussed, of $2 million. The expense favorability and then unfavorability we've already talked about. We go through the detail with the finance work group. There are a lot of expenses that add up to that unfavorability. That expense favorability is what we estimate as of right now. We will talk about the retention incentive, which is roughly $8.5 million. And then the TCP payout, which is our teacher incentive plan. We're funding it with an additional $1 million this year. So it gets us to our fiscal year 25 EBITDA forecast of $48 million. This is $4 million in excess of what we need it to be. So this allows us to possibly lower the EBITDA support from KIPP Texas Future Fund. What was built into the original fiscal year 25 budget was $8 million of EBITDA support from KIPP Texas Future Fund. There's a likelihood that we're going to reduce it at least in half and possibly even more. As a reminder for everyone in this group, we have not taken EBITDA support from KIPP Texas Future Fund since 2019.
Son? Future Fund is a $100 million endowment, basically, that is there for, for us as needed. We don't like to use it for expense bridges, right? We want to use it for more special projects and things like that. So this is good news.
Yeah, Son, I guess 2 quick questions. So one, can you explain what SHARS compliance is? And then 2, were we impacted by the premature ending of the ESSER funding, or had we already spent our allocations?
We spent every dollar. We didn't leave anything on the table.
Well, I can talk about the SHARS funding. So SHARS is basically a Medicaid reimbursement.
Okay.
So it's not guaranteed funding, it's a reimbursement. And it requires certain compliance, like an extra, basically, form to be filled out with a parent signature. And we have not, over the last several years, actually gotten that right from a parent signature perspective of having them sign off on the Medicaid reimbursement, because parents have to approve it. And so while we have this funding in our budget, we haven't been able to get it. And so we're fixing that system for next year. Laura and Rona have been working together to fix it. But as a result, this $1 million of funding that we had counted on from a Medicaid reimbursement isn't happening. So SHARS is basically Medicaid reimbursement.
Thank you.
Great. So that actually leads into the 3 risks heading into fiscal year 26. We have SPED transportation as a risk and SHARS compliance as a risk. We spend vastly more on SPED transportation than our peers do, so it's something that we're looking into. And then the SHARS compliance, which Seba just mentioned. So those 2 things are poses as a risk in heading into fiscal year 26, as well as the continued net enrollment decline. I think I'm sure some people have cognitive dissonance here when you say, hey, we beat our enrollment for this year, but next year, budget to budget, we're actually decreasing enrollment. And then so we do have a net enrollment decline. We'll talk more about that at the org health discussion as well. But that is another risk heading into fiscal year 26. We, just like many other school districts, including HISD, are seeing net enrollment declines across our organization. And then material unplanned expenses. So this is what I just talked about. We have about $1.5 million of unplanned additional asks, and we're trying to work through that. Plus, in addition to that, $1.5 million of less revenue, partially from SHARS compliance, and then budgeting for less fundraising revenue for next year as well.
Son, is the 4.2 of unbudgeted expenses, is that comparable to past years?
I would say it's within range. It's never like we don't have like $200,000 one year. It's multiple.
No, I know you're always going to have this. I'm just curious, is it generally?
I think it's, well, I would say in the last couple of years it's been a little bit less. There are a couple of things that like pushed it overboard. I would say like severance payments, with $1 million is probably the biggest thing.
And
we've never seen that amount.
We've gone after all that severance stuff now, right? Yeah.
Yes. We will change that policy going in on July 1st.
Cool.
New fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought I recall seeing this at $3 million unbudgeted. Perhaps I'm thinking of something else.
It was 4.2 of unbudgeted expenses.
But $1 million of it is severance. $1 million of it is severances, Patricia.
Okay.
So this is just the fiscal year 26 draft operating budget assumptions. There are still going to be changes. For example, we haven't changed lower fundraising revenue. We just got that information in. We also have to change our SHARS revenue because it is paid in arrears. So it is highly likely that we won't receive any material revenue from SHARS reimbursements next year either. So there's still changes that need to be made, but these are the material inputs to the fiscal year 26 budget. Again, this is just a refresher because it's the same exact slides that we showed last time. While having a net enrollment decline, attendance, we are increasing our attendance rate in our budget. So last year, current year for fiscal year 25, we budgeted 93.3. We're increasing our budget to 94.1%. It's almost an entire 100 basis points, 100 BIP increase. And then when you combine the rate and quantity, we still will see a decrease in average daily attendance, which is ultimately how we get paid by the state. Won't go through all the contingency plans, but as always, as the CFO, I'm planning for the worst case scenario. So we have significant contingency plans for both the balance sheet from a working capital perspective and income statement perspective for EBITDA and debt service coverage ratio. No change on this next slide, which is just talking about, we did do an org-wide salary increase, which Ann will talk about as well. We talked about the revenue increases, and then we did make significant expense decreases to decrease our budget deficit from that $33 million to closer to $18 million. The only material change is that org-wide salary increases of $5 million. The last board meeting, we hadn't found the amounts. Now we've actually found them and executed upon them by March 2025.
So, Son, on the 26 budget, what's your assumption around the student allotment and what will there be any change? Are you forecasting any change or staying flat for next year?
I will say my opinion doesn't matter. I will say that in the fiscal year 26 budget, it's a 0% increase in the state rate.
Okay.
Son, your opinion always matters.
But that is worst case. That is worst case.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, we said that 2 years ago, and then it actually happened. So
I know, I'm down a steak dinner that I still haven't paid, so.
Yeah. For clarity, we won't know until September 2025 what the actual increase is. So even if the legislature says, hey, we're going to do this, KIPP Texas and no district or charter school knows until we receive that amount from the TEA, which is in September 2025. Sorry. So then you actually know what the increase is. So even if something happens tomorrow, we don't actually know how it impacts our students in our organization.
Just wanted to make sure we weren't betting on the come.
Definitely not.
Not in this legislature.
Yeah,
Risk is a 4-letter word for son.
And then the reason why, if we go to the last slide, for the 0% increase is that even if their amount was 3%, it doesn't change our path as an organization. So if that amount was 0 or 3%, it just means that orange bar all the way on the right, which is the fiscal year 26 ending deficit, decreases. So it would be different if we were to say, hey, if we budgeted 3% state rate increase, son, you're withholding resources from the organization that we could spend. That would be true. In the case when you're running a deficit, when recurring expenses are greater than recurring revenue, all you're saying is that, hey, you have less of a deficit to find. So the answer on if somebody had the question of what state rate increase do we need to have to wipe out the deficit, it's approximately 6%. So if the state were to come in with 6%, then it's wiped clean, and then the executive team doesn't have to find additional cuts, though I wouldn't say that we shouldn't, because there are always efficiencies to find, as Lauren pointed out. So I think it would behoove us to try to find those efficiencies, but it would have to exceed 6% for us to be knowingly withholding resources from the organization today, meaning like it would have to come in at 7 or 8, and from our advisors at Texas Public Charter School Association who sit in Austin are closely connected, they said do not plan for anything above 6 at this point. So.
And safest to plan for 0 given what happened last time. So we definitely hope it'll be different. HB2 is the facilities funding bill from the House. It's now the Senate has their own version of the bill. It's really important that we continue to work with TPCSA to support these bills. because it can make a world of difference for us in terms of facilities funding. As a reminder, there's a $1,600 gap per student in what we receive for facilities funding compared to a traditional district.
Is HP2 in our model?
Nothing's in
there.
our model.
This is 0%.
Okay.
But again, if it
and-
did, it would just be a smaller orange bar at the end.
Yeah,
Right,
and
I just want to know what's in it.
nothing's in it.
So yeah, any increase would reduce our deficit, which would be positive news for us. as an
Because when you read the TPCSA newsletter, emails, they're feeling pretty darn good about HB2.
Yeah, we just know that there's a long way to go with conference committee, and there's a lot of negotiation still. Already the amount's been cut in half. So we just think that there's a long way to go, and it's safest to budget zero. And I'm not usually a Debbie Downer about these things, but I just realized.
And so remind me of why are we seeing decreased enrollment? Is there some bigger story, or is it just trends? Or
we're going to dive into that in the org health data, but a preview. We are beating our ABE because our highest performing, highest demand schools continue to have high demand, and our schools that are not hitting enrollment demand are seeing decreases. And so our ability to continue to increase revenue through enrollment is limited by the amount of space that we have in our buildings that have high demand.
So that's essentially like natural attrition we're expecting.
Okay.
All right, let's keep going on COLA
Yep.
and retention incentives, because we have a lot of discussion ahead of us.
meeting. Yes, and I'll be brief. So I'm bringing the COLA and retention incentive recommendation forward. I look forward to sharing in June my strategic plan for talent and HR. But for today, we're talking about COLA and retention incentive. And just to situate this conversation in what's happening in the market, inflation, as you know, is no surprise and is impacting all of the members of our KIPP Texas team and family. But we're also looking at really competitive offers that are coming out of other school systems. And I see our slide is down, but I can absolutely keep going. Thank you. So for example, many of you who, if you live in Houston, you know that HISD just announced an additional $10 million investment in base pay and performance pay for their teachers. We're seeing school systems in our region set higher base salary for starting teachers, and some teachers being able to make up to 6 figures with a combination of their base pay and performance pay models. And so we know that we have to continue to compete. My team that recruits teacher talent is also sharing that many of our applicants who withdraw from our processes indicate that they are receiving a higher or a different offer from another school system, and that is a primary reason for withdrawal. You can go to the next slide.
But your retention numbers are quite good right now.
Yeah, so
quite good.
Yes.
As good as I've seen.
And we'll see when we look at the numbers, we expect that for our hardest to staff retention numbers, the picture is not good. So when we think about special education, bilingual, multilingual, it's below our target and continues to be of concern.
But I don't think that's unique to us, right?
No.
Right.
All right, so the objective of the COLA and the retention incentive program is, one, of course, to ensure that we keep our hardest to staff positions. 2, that we retain more of our teachers and staff. And of course, that we move even closer to retaining high performers and keeping them at a higher rate. So just to give you a historical perspective, if you go to the next slide, I want to acknowledge that we recognize that this recommendation is not as tightly aligned to our shared desire to steer the majority of our investments to our highest performers, and yet it is a step in the right direction. You can see that from school year 23 and 24, we basically took more of a peanut butter spread approach when it comes to our COLA and retention incentives, very much focused on an even amount for every employee, and in some cases additional amounts for tenure, but not around performance. This recommendation gets us closer to putting our greatest rewards in the hands of our highest performers. And I'm going to pause here to see if there are any questions. If not, we can look at the structure of both the COLA recommendation and the retention incentive. So as we've talked about, the COLA recommendation is a $5 million recommendation. It provides for variable investments and incentives per role type, putting greater dollars in our COLA recommendation to school leaders and APs who we've seen some retention challenges over the course of the last several years, and putting greater dollars in the hands of our core teachers. And then if you look at our retention, and I'm sorry, go to the next slide, you can see where this lands us in the market. It allows us to retain, there you go. It allows us to retain our position in terms of our ability to be competitive. And while, for example, in Houston, being 29th out of 60 school districts may not sound competitive, we recognize that the range is within a few $1,000s between what the highest paying school system in Houston pays and the lowest. But this allows us to retain our position in each city.
And I just want to make sure I understand the structure again. COLA to me means somebody gets a increase in their salary of X%, right?
Correct.
And then the retention bonus is a one-timer.
Yes, right. Yeah, so the
maybe
COLA.
Maybe I forgot. I didn't think we did a COLA this year.
We didn't.
We did.
What?
We didn't.
We did not.
So
We did a retention bonus.
okay, so when it says COLA under SY25,
We're talking about step increases for teachers. So even though we didn't issue a COLA, our teachers still received a step increase. So that's the comparative point.
is that the TCP step increase?
No, that's for our step and lane salary schedule. So every year that a teacher stays, they get a small increase. Oh, I'm so sorry.
I thought because we were not doing any kind of salary increase, we were doing this bonus as a one-timer.
No, I'm sorry. No, there's an error on this slide. The recommendation is for SY26, not for this year. I apologize.
So there is no COLA in 25?
No.
No, there were, like Houston and Dallas
and
teachers
Dallas.
received COLAs.
A step increase. Yeah, they received an increase.
No, the
They received a COLA.
They
increase
received
based on
an
COLA.
increase
Yeah.
because their salaries were really out of line.
Yeah.
But that's not COLA. That's
Yeah,
a
forgive the error.
get you
It's an adjustment.
get you into the
was an adjustment.
appropriate area.
Yeah.
Correct.
An adjustment. That's a different ballgame.
Yeah.
No, it's the same.
Yeah. So
money.
so just to
It is
be
money.
Money
just
is
to be
money.
really
Additional
clear.
dollars.
It's looking like a two for the CHRO.
Just to be really clear, we did not do a COLA in FY25. We are asking for the COLA increase for SY26. We messed up on the slide because we're asking for it now. But there's no COLA increase across the organization as a whole in SY25.
It was zeros.
Correct.
COLA.
Yeah.
And you'll do that for her next strategic study, you'll use the COLA money.
Yes, exactly. That 4.5 plus the
Sorry.
benefit.
Okay. So next year, if I'm going to get this one-timer,
Yep.
and I will most likely budget supported receive a COLA of some kind.
Yes.
Say that again, Jean?
He's saying if there's also budget, will I receive a COLA increase? in
Next
the
year, I'll get
year?
this. I'll get a check from this retention bonus,
Correct.
and I will also
And it will be paid out for work done this year.
correct.
Yep.
But I will also hopefully, because of the budget, receive a COLA of
Correct.
2 to 4%.
Correct.
I don't know the
This
word.
COLA
hopefully,
that
though.
we're talking
Like, why do you keep
Cost
saying
of living
We're-
increase.
It's not hopefully, it's if the board approves it.
Yeah.
It's this. This is what we're.
If we approve the budget,
Yes.
Yeah, if you all approve the budget, it's
we're not going to approve this.
like, yeah.
Sarah, the COLA, when will that go into effect for next year?
It will go out, it will be integrated into people's salaries starting on July 1st.
And there is.
Oh, 2026.
July 1st of 2025 for the 25-26
26
school year.
Okay.
Correct.
25, 26.
Got it.
What is this? What?
COLA, which is the same as a pay increase.
February 29th.
Okay, and keep going.
All good. And then
Keep
Patricia,
going.
just to add to the clarification, the retention incentive will be paid out in September of 2025.
September of 2025.
This year.
This year.
And this is due to us having better enrollment and better attendance than we expected, and having extra dollars in the budget that were unexpected because the team outperformed.
Correct.
Yeah, expense in fiscal year 25, paid in fiscal year 26.
And the reason we can do this, as Allison said, is the team outperformed specifically when it came to attendance rate and meeting our enrollment targets.
And hopefully
And that
eventually
is
meeting our academic goals.
Correct. But this is a result of really the team and family, all of our staff rallying around our attendance strategies and implementing them with fidelity, and keeping our kids. We have a better persistence rate this year than we did last year, and that's helpful. And so those two things, we wanted to take that extra, surplus revenue that we were able to receive in this year and turn it back around to our team and family, to our staff.
And I apologize, I know I was out, so if you've covered this previously. This is kind of a one-time fortuitous thing.
Yes.
Are you guys thinking of considering kind of baking this into an incentive program going forward more systematically, where if we outperform and so it's not a like, oh cool, we have extra money, but it's actually like, if we outperform, you'll get this.
I mean, we will fund our bonus program if we outperform our attendance results moving forward.
But bonuses don't go that deep in the organization.
So Anne's going to come back in June and give us a presentation on the talent strategy, and I think that's a great topic to address, Ethan, if that's okay with you, at that session.
Thank you.
So.
Yeah. Incentive comp is a great topic, Ethan.
Yeah.
No, it is, because we don't have.
Thanks, Gene.
No, we don't have much going on.
It needs to all be tied together, and
Right.
and it's a really big topic, and we're excited to hear from Anne in June on that. So.
Yes, because one of the things we talked about in the finance meeting was that when I think of retention bonuses, my concern is you pay it out and the people, they get it and then they leave at a certain point. This is what we see, in our corporation. So what is in place to ensure that the individuals who are getting these retention bonuses do actually stay at least for the school year, if it's going to be paid out in July?
Yes,
it's
it'll
gonna
be paid out in September, Patricia, but we'll ask that people sign a written commitment that they understand that they're accepting this retention incentive so that they stay through the school year, and we'll put in place a measure to be able to get that money back on the back end should they not keep that commitment.
I thought we said because
I'm sorry, the written commitment, but
because
the clawback is very difficult to do.
Difficult. I thought we said we're not going to.
Yes, but
this is a one-time payment.
Yes.
We're going to rely on
the vast
At
majority.
the very least, a written commitment from folks acknowledging that they've accepted the funds.
This is a one-time payment to the vast majority of the employees in the organization.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
For this year. Okay.
Okay, so we wanted to talk you through this today, although we will not be formally voting on this today.
Because it is within SEVA's delegated authority.
No.
It's part of the budget.
I'll explain it in closed. It's part of the budget.
Okay, it's part of the budget. All right, we'll talk about it in closed session. Okay, thank you. And now, Laura, will you take us through the Texas TX SCC intruder audit findings?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, since the beginning of our current school year, TEA has conducted 43 intruder audits across our KIPP Texas schools with 10 total findings. With findings, TEA assigns corrective actions for retraining staff. We craft a plan of action to address deficiencies, and we notify the public via this board meeting and share results with our safety and security committee meetings as well. We will discuss the details of the findings when we enter into executive session.
Great. All right. So now we're going to move on to vote on the consent agenda. And I believe that there are a couple of items that Shanna would like to pull off the consent agenda.
Sharon, what you got?
She's out.
Okay.
Let's see, do we know which ones?
I think we can quickly.
Okay, which ones? We're going to take the curriculum items and vote on them separately. So let's,
Yeah, I think
the text certification, the amplify, this one?
Yep.
I think those are the two.
Shanna wanted, which ones did you say?
Text and the amplify education contract?
And the which one?
The text certification
The
or
TEAC
no?
certification, no, I think
No,
it's,
I think it's the OER one. I'm not sure what her second one was.
I'm not
We
sure
can
about the
go
second
into close, we have to come back into open to close it, so.
So we could vote on the
so
consent.
We can move this to when we come back after executive session. And that way Shannon's here and we can align them with.
Any,
one.
nobody's leaving?
No,
Okay.
not that they've told me.
Okay. All right, well, because we wish to do this correctly, we will come back and vote on the consent agenda after executive session. So I am going to now move that we adjourn to executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071, consultation with board attorney regarding all matters as authorized by law, Texas Government Code 551.074, deliberation regarding appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment duties, dismissal of employees, officers, including the Texas executive team, Texas Government Code 551.072, deliberate, purchase, exchange, value, or lease real property, and Texas Government Code 551.076, discussion regarding safety and security, personnel of devices, and/or audits. We are now back in open session. The time is 4:46 p.m. and the video's on and we're recording. Great. We now need to move to the consent agenda. We have 3 items we're removing from the main vote, and we're going to vote on those separately as one member wants to abstain. They're the final 3 listed: the resolution on TEAC certification for school year 25-26, resolution to approve Amplify Education Inc. contract, and resolution to approve the OER transition plan. Do I have any questions or discussion? Could I get a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
1.
Thank you. Okay, the motion passes. And now we will vote on the remainder of the consent agenda. Do any members want to make any changes to those? Any discussion? Could I get a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. I think that is our business for today. The time's now 4:47 p.m. and hearing no objection, the meeting is adjourned.